Well, Karen, please tell us a little bit about your practice
Sure.
in general.
I mean, so some of the ideas I certainly mentioned through the lens of Mary and Max's project, but
Mhm.
my background. It's funny. I did as I was thinking about what to cover, or like addressing these questions.
Sure.
Richard, I didn't even think about the fact that I had that exact same conversation with my parents about
Oh, just
being an artist.
but you won.
I
You won the
did.
conversation.
Convincing.
So I went to a small undergrad that was a lot like Trinity, called Hope College in
Okay.
Holland, Michigan. It was a very small but fantastic art department. I had a couple art classes in high school. I was always dabbling and
Oh, yeah.
just loved anything
That's
creative.
where it all starts.
My father, who we were, he didn't. Long story. My parents were divorced, but he's still very much a part of my life. But he was an engineer, so I sort of have a dual brain where I've got both sides of that coin.
Mhm.
And so same thing. I went to school and he said, well, maybe you should think about, he wanted me to go into business. And I thought, okay, architecture, that's something I could do.
Sure.
So I actually went so far as I was doing an internship in I think it was my sophomore or first semester junior year. We could do a semester abroad. And I actually did not abroad, but in the field. And so I went back to Chicago and I actually internshipped for an architecture firm there.
Wow. I had
I
no idea.
I
That's great.
was doing little space studies. It was a commercial firm where they were taking like floors of the Sears Tower and redesigning for companies that would rent, a corporate
Sure.
office.
That's
And
big
so
time things.
it was a very small firm, and there was a lot of very young architects. And so I was, at some point kind of doing some little space studies and such. And I realized, like, getting to know these architects, that they were all going home after doing this job all day and still working on independent projects. They were
Mhm.
going home and they were designing furniture and designing homes for their friends and doing other creative endeavors.
Sure.
And so the sell of doing something to make a living right at that moment just went out the window for me. And I thought, if they're doing this job and
Mhm.
they're still going home and they're fully trained, they're licensed, they're doing this job and they're going home and then they're doing what they truly love to do,
Mhm.
then all bets are off. So I went back to school and I said, no, I'm going to be. So I actually had a double major in art history, and actually I was one credit shy of my art history, but I did my background's in sculpture.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So speaking to that sort of love, I have always been somebody who I love the physicality of the world, the material sense of things.
Mhm.
So that has always been something that has kept me tied to ideas of design, objecthood,
Mhm.
really kind of being in touch with the physical objects around us, the spaces that we live in, how we interpret, moving through a space, the way light travels across a room. And so I've always
Nuances.
been tied
Nuances.
into sort of that thing, like the poetics of space and all that was all very important to me. So I think always it kept me tethered to
Mhm.
these ideas of architecture, design, love of the object. And so sculpture was just
Absolutely.
it for me.
Mhm.
So then I went on and came here for graduate school, met Ken Little. My sculpture professor was friends with Ken Little, and
Okay.
ended up coming to San Antonio. Unbeknownst to me, it was not in my plans, but that's where I ended up. And I'm so glad that I found it, because
Yeah.
what an amazing community. And
Right.
Mhm.
You teach it.
I do. I'm at Palo Alto. So I've been
Mhm.
there, Palo Alto College. I'm in the fine arts department. I've been there for 22 years
Wow,
now,
that's great.
teaching. I started in digital media. So my practice, I went from sculpture to right away doing some digital video,
Mhm.
thinking about how that translates, like, experience of habitual. A lot of my objects had to do with sort of the cycles of, like, how we participate in
Mhm.
space and objects, how we produce, how we erode, and so that translated into video.
Mhm.
When I got out of graduate school, of course, I didn't have access to studio space, so I started sort of playing around with looking through the lens and
Mhm.
documenting the existence of things rather than making.
Mhm.
And so that led me to start teaching digital media. But now I think I'm somebody, I float a lot between different mediums.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
I love the fact
Okay.
that artists can look forward to that ancillary space of having a studio. You know,
Right.
how many
Yeah.
professions think about a room that you go into to make creations?
Sure.
True.
That always enthralled
Yeah.
me to have that as part of my life.
For
And
the longest while, I didn't though. I mean, I think coming because it was, an added cost
oh, for
and
sure.
waiting tables, and
That's right.
but so I worked in my home, so much of my work related to domestic objects that it made perfect sense that I sort of dwelled in my home and I
Studio is home.
reflected my home in my work.
Oh, yeah.
And sort of the moments and quietudes and making these little observations
Of
of
course. Yeah.
situations. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. So, what sort of exhibitions have you had in town that people maybe have remembered, or do you have public art?
I do. I have both. I was thinking, you live in San Antonio long enough, and you're going to be just about. I've been in spaces that don't even exist anymore.
It's
So
just
many great artist-run spaces is a big component of San Antonio. Really
Mhm.
early, a lot of there weren't as many institutions like Blue Star.
Right.
That most of them were
Kind of the
artist-run
impetus for so much.
Yeah.
Blue Star started 34 years ago.
Yeah.
We didn't have contemporary galleries to speak of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
There was one downtown that Ann Alexander ran.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, but so I'm proud
We
that
had
Blue Star just generated a lot of studios and a lot
Yeah.
of galleries.
It was kind of a hub.
Yeah,
that
so
kind of
in
helped
that
launch.
complex, and it still is, but we have like Three Walls Gallery, which is Michelle Monceau, Cactus Bra, which is Jane
Mhm.
Lawrence and Leanne Lester. We had
Trans-
Project Space, which was Ethel Shipton for a while.
Mm.
Solid Diaz, House Spaces.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Clara Gallery that Shafter had at Blue
yeah,
Star.
yeah.
And now the Cactus Bra has transitioned to the Cactus Bar.
Yes,
Yes.
King William.
Held on to the Cactus word there.
Right. That's
So I then, moving up,
Mhm.
doing residencies and like I did the Berlin residency through the
Yes.
Contemporary,
Mhm.
was part of the first group to do that. We had an exhibition there at Blue Star. Um, I did a residency recently, a summer program, which was really great at Trinity. So I
Oh,
had
yeah.
an exhibition there
Mhm.
called Objects of Absence.
Mhm.
I haven't done the art pace residence, but I did a project that I really enjoyed doing in their Winterworks program.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah. And then and you had, is that the extent of your public art?
public art, yeah, I've got two I've actually done three. Two are still in existence. One, maybe not so much because it was a video piece. It was,
Oh, yeah.
thinking about permanence, impermanence. I
Mhm.
think technology is tough to keep up on
That
in
is.
public works. So I have one called Playhouse, which was part of the Hemisphere when they redid the Yanawana Gardens.
Mhm. Mhm.
Early on, that was a collective that came together through Stuart Allen, gathered Joey Farso, Justin Boyd, myself, and Jen Koshman.
Yes.
And so
Okay,
we
great.
collectively all designed our own projects, sort of within this package. And so we landed on the idea because a big part of it was the playscape
Okay.
and
Yes.
Yanawana Gardens. And so we really landed on the idea of trying to everybody approaching their project related to the idea of play.
Mhm.
Because I think it's something that we hang on to, certainly
Yes.
as adults.
Or we need to.
We need to, we should more often. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mine, I did again a little research about the site that I actually, because living in the Lavaca neighborhood,
Mhm.
knowing that Hemisphere was once part of the neighborhood,
Mhm.
it was stitched to the neighborhood and then kind of got divided.
Yeah.
There were neighborhoods and houses that were there before
The hemisphere.
68.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
the fair, the World's Fair.
The World's Fair.
And so the site actually that I ended up being kind of given in
Mhm.
terms of this project related directly to some houses that existed on I see that was like Water Street and Matagora went through there.
Right.
So I was able to go in through the UT portal and actually find images
Mhm.
of the houses that
Oh.
existed there.
Always wanted to see those pictures.
Yeah, they're really, and they're really great, but they're fun to access. And it's also like I love Sanborn maps and looking at the history of like what existed before it
I
changed.
love that research and
Yeah,
background.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's also, so it's like, it's little, again, layers, memory,
Right.
things that we forget about
Absolutely.
that we can bring back to the fore. And so I think that's what I really, even though my it's all about play. I think there's a serious aspect to play too, which is the idea of pretend,
Mhm.
like projecting yourself into a space. I think that's something we still can do as adults. So my work is a recreation, a scaled down version of using a salt box style house, which was basically what was there.
That I like
And
the
I
piece.
recreated the plans and scaled it down, but it is made out of um, folded trees. So it's really the shadow of pecan trees that are folded into a house, and then they have these wallpaper screens on the side. So you can go in and kind of exist inside the shadows. And then on the concrete, I etched the floor plan of what would be a house. So kids
Mhm.
could say, they're in this room, I'm in this
Oh,
room.
that's
And
great.
so they could
I
either
need
just
to go
run
in.
straight
I've
through it
already
or
driven
play
by. I
house.
haven't gone
Yeah,
into
definitely.
it.
Me too.
I've always loved that piece.
So it's a little nod to
Yeah, it's a
the
beautiful.
people who lived there
Mhm.
Yeah.
while still activating the space and becoming playful.
And it's a wonderful one
That's
because it was a very controversial situation when
it
it was
was.
fairly
Yeah.
developed, and they were taking this neighborhood by eminent domain, and oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it was sadly displaced many
Yeah.
families.
And the families who were, I mean, they were thought that it was like a derelict neighborhood, or it didn't
Right.
have value.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden then the people's lives were not valued, or they
Mhm.
didn't feel valued or seen.
Right, right. Yeah, that was the tragic part of that experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sad to say.
Definitely.
So just a tiny little nod to that,
Yes, yeah.
while still keeping some lightness and some glee
Wonderful.
in the
Mhm.
project. And then, so the other one I got to do was through King William, which is a whole different experience of public art. When we're talking about the intersection of art and design,
Sure.
working within constraints, certainly public art can work within those constraints, thinking about certainly materials, longevity, safety, all the things that you run up against to say, well, somebody's
Yes.
going to climb it, somebody's going to stick their finger in there and
Yes.
get it out. So,
It gets really hot,
yeah.
yeah.
So the other one that I did was two bus benches that are on South Alamo and King William,
Okay.
right at the intersection of Cedar and I just lost the name of the street. The one that Bar Loretta's on, Tito's,
Oh yeah.
right at that intersection. So South Alamo and Cedar.
Okay.
And so King William had an opportunity to ask an artist through their neighborhood arts council
Mhm.
that they funded the bus benches and
Okay.
we got them approved through VIA. So they asked me to do
There's a
one.
lot of layers there.
Yeah.
Just getting it approved.
So then thinking about the idea of a bus bench, I again, looking at the history of the space, and I started thinking about, like, again, structures that were there that weren't there, but I landed on the idea of, I was spending so much time on these Sanborn maps that I actually made the bus benches as maps themselves.
Oh, great.
So they are like sections of the maps on both sides of South Alamo of King William, and so the bus benches are sort of segments of those maps taken out and folded so that you
Okay.
can sit on them, and you can also see you are here, and you can see the streets, and
Very nice.
use it as some wayfinding, which was a
Oh,
lot
that's
of fun.
great. Yeah.
So working with King again, like some level of trust in the design process, and just sort of handing over, and but having a dialogue, but just having it be a really joyous
Mhm.
conversation with the
Right.
neighborhood itself.
Sure, yeah, and then what a great history that King William has too.
Yeah.
That's really great. Well, perfect. Well, I was gonna see if we could talk about, well, first of all, what was it like working with Richard on this project? He's
Well,
he's right here, so no
I know,
pressure.
absolutely delightful. We sort of didn't intersect more than just
Right.
the
Okay.
connection between Mary and Max.
Exactly, because we had already sort of created the canvas, if you will,
Mhm.
and the rest was Karen.
Okay, got
And
it.
so we had done our part, and we
Mhm.
were very happy that she was selected, of course, and
Mhm.
um, just just exactly what we wanted to have happened. And so
Perfect.
Yeah.
glad for that. I wish there would have been more interaction or
Mhm.
conversation, but
We'll have to do another.
it's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got to have to set things up again. now. But,
That's great.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's also really a nice idea that the client, we were sort of on both sides of that, and they were the pivot
that's
between.
right. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
You
They
know,
were the catalyst for all of that.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And it was fun to respond to your structure,
Well,
like the spaces that you had already created, and thinking about, I mean, the idea of bringing in that project, we also used, we didn't get to mention, the materials
Mhm.
are is all longleaf pine.
Okay.
So we actually had, my husband and I had a pile
Recycled.
literally of recycled, like salvage
Fantastic.
wood that came from a house that our neighbor Scott Martin had
Right.
taken down over on
Right.
Barrera.
Yeah,
And then
it's
he,
full of that.
yeah, so we had a lot of this really beautiful vintage longleaf pine. My husband's a woodworker, so I thought, what a great application
Yeah.
to then
It's a good word
that
for
little
history.
pole of history that
Mhm.
would have been just like the materials in their old house, now sitting at the floor of this now beautiful contemporary home that had,
Right.
yeah, the galvanized metal.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the home was designed for ease of maintenance because that was the problem with the house they were in.
Right.
Oh,
Is that something was always falling off of it.
oh no.
They needed to paint it or needed to be patched, and they were tired of that. And so
Yes, I can
the new
imagine.
house, if you see it, it's all corrugated metal,
Mhm.
and which we got a little pushback on that, but we wanted to create something that would never have to have a can of paint opened on,
Yes.
or any wood rot or any of those things that
Sure.
unfortunately plagues wonderful historic districts like Lubbock and King William. It's just I've lived in King William in a house there, and it needed constant maintenance. And
Sure.
this is something that Mary and Maxwell just didn't want to have to spend their time on.
Sure.
They're both very busy with their work and
Mhm.
such. So anyway, that was the premise of this material selection. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
simple forms, get it done. We knew that Mary was going to have gatherings there, so we designed it with that in mind, with sort of two back porches that operate off of one corridor that
Mhm.
separates the sacred from the profane in the house. And so the private bedrooms are toward the back and more public spaces in the front. So
Got it. And does Lavaca have many restrictions as far as like, what the facade looks like and any of that? But
not so much in Lubbock at the time,
okay.
as opposed to, we're doing work in Monte Vista, which, oh my gosh,
That would
it's
have
just, you have to bow and be blessed. But no, Lubbock is just, that's what we loved about it. It had a very sort of kind of a rogue characteristic to
Sure.
it. And you see so many interesting types of houses in
Sure.
Lavaca. And so we kind of borrowed on that, some of those ideas that we picked up in the neighborhood and such.
Mhm.
So it's kind of partly industrial, partly commercial, and partly residential.
Oh,
The
yeah.
two of them kind of marry each other as you
That's
go down
nice. Yeah.
Cressa. And so, yeah, that's kind of what the house
Yeah.
represents.
That's great. It's nice to have all of those to kind of play off of too, I would imagine.
So,
Right. Yeah.
it's fun to visit those vocabularies to
Mhm.
develop idea work. So
Yeah, fantastic. Well, good. So I had run across an article that was probably back in 2019, but it was from the M Plus Museum of Contemporary Art in
Mhm.
Hong Kong, and they gave a list of traditional differences between art and design, and just kind of the general vantage point of how the differences are. So I want to get y'all's response on some of these. Design is functional, art is not. What do you think?
Are we going to do it one by one?
Yeah, just one by
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I'll start just also because I'm an educator. So
Sure.
I talk about this all the time. I teach not just studio classes, but art appreciation, like for non-majors. So we start right at the beginning talking about these categories, and I'm making, bunny ears around that. These categories are delineated categories, which are kind of modern delineations
Mhm.
that initially they come about during the Renaissance. You have the division of the artist with a capital A versus the nameless crafts
Oh,
person,
sure. Mhm.
stone worker, carver. And so there becomes this big separation between, even in advance of design, craft.
Mhm.
And so then I think on top of that, you start to have a value that's placed on one over the other,
Mhm.
which makes for an interesting conversation.
Mhm.
And I think maybe for a long while it's thinking about that art being above that, being
Mhm.
that it's more heady or, doesn't have function. It's meant for concept. And all of those things are true. But I think the most interesting things happen when you're in that space between,
Mhm. Yeah.
when you sort of let go of those categorizations and sort of not worry about what is serving what,
Mhm.
but that you're making good work. And because I would agree, yes, design has function,
Mhm.
craft and object has function. But, we talk about like, I don't know, like tea ceremonies in
Mm.
Japan,
Mhm.
the honoring of the imperfections of a cup, the masterworker of a ceramicist, and what kind of value is placed on that
Mhm.
versus the Mona Lisa,
Right.
right? So
Mhm.
who's to say which one
Right.
has more value, which
Mhm.
one is greater than the other? But that conversation certainly comes from the delineation that we like to
Absolutely.
make.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Yeah. What do you think, Richard?
Well, again, I think I said it earlier that I try to focus on similarities versus differences.
Right.
And, um, thank you for the referencing that article.
Yeah.
The content of it to me was somewhat sophomoric, and
Sure.
they're just it's too easy of a path
mhm,
to talk about, the differences
Mhm.
that are so obvious and such. Of course, but it bothered me as it said that design is reproductive and such, but and not always. You look at someone like Noguchi who made wonderful art
Mhm.
as well as objects
mhm,
to function,
Mhm.
be they tables or chairs or
yeah.
whatever his passion was at the time. But he did both, and he did them simultaneously back
Sure.
and forth. And
mhm,
and so I think that's a real marriage, and
Mhm.
that's the marriage I like to think about and focus on as an
mhm,
architect and
mhm,
artist together. So,
Mhm.
so when I go into my office, when I go into my studio, it's to do both.
Mhm.
Sometimes I totally don't think about architecture. Don't want to, don't need to.
mhm,
I just focus on the art. And
Sure.
so but I think there need I'm looking for a really good uh, intelligent conversation and article and narrative about art and architecture, and I'm still
Mm.
searching
Oh,
for
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, when you find one, please let us know.
I think
yeah,
I found one. I'll pass it.
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Yeah, I think design solves a problem, art expresses a feeling or idea. Again, I think that kind of goes to what you were saying about the two could definitely be blended,
Right,
Mhm,
right.
right?
mhm.
Design objects or mass produced artworks are unique.
Yeah, I would argue that is not necessarily true. I mean,
Mhm.
there are artists who specifically, there are artists who try to deny that
Mhm.
just through their practice. You look at somebody like Roxy Payne, who, or you build a machine that manufactures objects, or
Mhm.
they're on the opposite side of that. An artist that I always liked looking at was Andrea Zattel,
Mhm.
who's an artist who creates living spaces, right?
Mhm.
Creates like Corbusier, living, making machines for living,
Right.
that
Mhm.
the living becomes the practice.
Mhm.
So I think, and that's where really things get really exciting and
Right.
really interesting, is when you're
Well,
looking
and
at
so
the both sides of that.
Sure.
some pieces of art like yours at Hemisphere, invite people to come into it to
Right.
experience that. And so
Yeah.
in a way, that shelter, that space. Richard Serra, as much as he berates architecture, if you will,
Mhm.
creates at the Nasher Center his vertical piece there. You can actually enter into it, so it's a room,
Mhm.
it's a space, and it has wonderful acoustics in it. And I don't know if he intended for all that to be like that,
Mhm.
but it's definitely, to me, it's architecture
Mhm.
too, because
Sure.
Absolutely.
it's habitable,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and so I look for that, those kinds of conditions that begin to marry things, whether the art
Mhm.
was intended or not.
Mhm.
Certainly, Karen's was intended to
Sure.
enter and observe
Mhm.
and experience.
When you have architecture, the ideas again are about thinking how you exist within a space or how you regard it from the outside. But like you look at somebody like Richard Serra, he very purposely tried to interrupt that space in the same
Famously.
way. It's the same
Mhm.
process. He's just doing it as, a
Oh, and
counter
he was
experience.
famously scolded it with his big arc.
Yeah,
Oh my
absolutely. So he was thinking about the
Right.
same
Yeah.
ideas, just running counter to them in a way
Sure.
that could be as activating.
Right.
But he
Mhm.
didn't have to call
Demands a
architects
response.
plumbers. He really didn't.
Certainly not.
We
Yeah.
are far more sophisticated, I think.
Right.
Although I love plumbers because they make the world happen. But
Yes, I love plumbing.
anyway, it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But I
Yeah.
think it's the question. I mean, looking at that list that they
Mhm.
wrote, it seemed to me that they were really kind of begging the question.
Sure.
They're
Yeah.
adding those in order to incite a thought about that, the
Right.
delineation, not that they're it's their manifesto,
Right.
right? It is
Absolutely.
they're making you ask
Mhm.
about it. And I think somebody like Richard Serra is, and he was an artist that was making you ask about that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
That's a
But
great
in a very
example.
gruff way.
In a very gruff way. Well, that's just that was
He and Donald Judd were tough
that
guys.
was his role.
Oh, yeah.
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 But I just want to quickly speak to something
Sure.
that I've had to deal with in my lifetime as an artist and an architect.
Yeah, please.
I think the observation from some artists is, sorry, you're an architect, you can't be an artist.
Oh.
Or I've heard that. I've actually heard that
Mhm.
from someone I respect here in San Antonio as an artist. But there's confusion in there. Anybody that does anything can still be an artist, and you
Mhm.
don't have to wait tables, and you don't have to, make a meager living and then make art,
Right.
beautiful art. You can make a living to support your family and children
Mhm.
and still make art. So I
Sure.
just want to get that out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's always a very suspicious endeavor if you do something else that you're successful at.
Right.
Why would you ever want to be an artist? And who thinks you can be an
Mhm.
artist just because you think you are? So anyway, that's one of those sensitive subjects to me. But
Right.
Yeah.
certainly historically, artists and architects were married in the same person. And you go back to Michelangelo and that period of history, and they were doing it all and inventing and creating and doing all kinds of things. And where did all that go?
We all still do.
Exactly.
You kind of have to wear many hats,
Uh,
even
and,
as an
and, and
artist.
art is not as stressful as architecture. Architecture is the most stressful occupation.
Karen's like,
You're dealing with clients' money, you're dealing with expectations, you're dealing
it's a lot
to
of
satisfy
constraint.
a project that deals with millions of dollars worth of people's money and making
Mhm.
something.
Sure.
And it's put on the landscape and it's got to weather and it's got to last and endure. And the expectations are huge. And so the anxiety levels for architects are quite high.
Sure.
Not talked about a lot. Oh, I'd love to be an architect. That must be a lot of fun. It is, but you never sleep. And you
Right.
have to marry it.
Mhm.
Find me a successful architect. I'll find someone who's married to their job.
Sure.
It really, it never leaves you.
Right.
It's with me when I'm at the office. It's with me when I come home. It's with me as I sleep and when I wake up. And
Mhm.
it's just a never-ending process. It really
Mhm.
is. Got that off my chest.
Yeah. I've been waiting to say that for 45 years, right?
I'm
No, that's good.
exhausted.
That's
It
great.
can all be pretty exhausting. I mean,
Mhm.
I think on the other side of that too, like being an artist and an educator, I certainly really want people to be informed about, the age we're living in, what has happened before us, what comes next. I
Sure.
think, understanding that we don't just make art in a vacuum, although you can certainly go into your space and just make the work that moves you and never worry about the other side of the conversation.
Mhm.
Um, and there are certainly people who might always be the sort of inside, they've always been an artist, but they've never called themselves that, or they don't go to school for it. We had a lot of categories and names for, outsider artist or folk artist, people who are not academically trained. So, I mean, that's a whole other delineation
Sure.
where you can start to talk about, well, what is it to go to school and study, contemporary history or art history, and then think about making work not in a vacuum, but within a much broader
Context.
arc. Yeah,
Sure.
putting it within a context. I think architecture is the same way.
Yeah.
But that can be an important conversation to have.
Mhm.
And what is the function of art in society? Is it about spurring conversation and concept and dialogue, things that are profound? There's a lot of pressure to, really be addressing highly topical issues or highly contemporary issues when making work, or do you just make work that makes you happy?
Mhm.
And then, so I think that's a really important thing to think about and
Mhm.
consider. I don't know that there's an answer. I certainly don't
Right.
have one, but
Yeah. See-
as an educator and somebody who has curricula that we try to it becomes a gateway, a pathway for people to feel like they belong in the
Mhm.
community of being an artist, understanding what the techniques are, the processes, how to network, how to set up your own studio, how to,
Right.
so we want more people to be involved in that actively, and I
That's
think
good.
it's needed.
That's good.
So yeah.
Do you think there's a lot of pressure for some artists to respond to what is selling in the moment and like
Sure.
respond to pop culture and try to do a bunch of that. And then, do you think
Yeah.
that's
I think one thing that I've have a struggle with is the idea of art as entertainment, or that art competing with entertainment,
oh, sure.
because we are so entertained and
Mhm.
everything just streams and streams and streams
Mhm.
on demand. We can have things that are just visually compelling and sensational, and there's so much high production
Mhm.
visual material out there in the world,
Huge
that
amounts.
art is has some really stiff competition.
Yes, for sure.
So we, in a lot of cases, there's instances where those things are being married
Mhm.
into experiential institutions
Yes.
that I think even like art institutions, museums, in a traditional way, are having a lot to compete with as well.
Yes. Mhm.
And I don't want to disparage any level of entertainment or people going and finding joy. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to name any institutions, but yeah, so
But
and artists get to participate in a lot of that as
Sure.
well. But we might, in some ways, take an art experience and we Disneyfy it. Am I allowed to say that?
Sure.
yeah,
Which leaves.
Conversation reminds me a little bit to your speaking point of the book that Robert Venturi wrote in
Yeah.
the 70s, Contradiction and Complexities.
Mhm.
And that's, that we've lived in that world for a long
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
It's become far more complex now with the advent of all of the social media and everything
Sure.
else.
Just the fast pace of everything.
It can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about, too much time on the screens is going to make people crazy and
Mhm.
lose their
Yep.
hearing and all kinds. Never subjects that were discussed before,
Right.
just like what in the world and how we're going to survive all of that and what we're going to become when AI is in full force. Who knows? And it's an
Yeah.
exciting time for
Mhm.
sure,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's a little scary.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I often say that things are moving at such a fast pace, and you're kind of seeing all the different decades being rebooted because
Yeah,
they don't have
faster
time to
and
come up
faster.
with their own 1950s, original.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let's just reboot the 50s. Let's
Yeah.
reboot the 60s because we don't have time to think about it.
We've been writing about that for decades and decades. I mean, Walter Benjamin talking about art in the age of mechanical reproduction, and that there is no authenticity. This idea of the artist or art with a capital A versus a little a, that everything's sort of a remix, a
Mhm.
reboot. But yeah, maybe that is coming faster
Mhm.
and more often.
More and more.
I mean, even Warhol said things like that. Like, we
Mhm.
live in a copy and paste world.
Mhm.
He wanted to be a machine for making art, and was excited about those ideas. But
Mhm.
yeah, so maybe there's room for all of it. I would
Right.
hope,
You would hope. Yes.
But
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
when we get back to the idea of funding,
Yeah.
where the support goes.
Right.
Is a tough.
That is
tough
kind of a
conversation.
fight. Yeah. I
Mm.
think it is kind of a lot of pressure. Yeah.
We just keep fighting the good fight every day.
Mhm.
Get up, do what you're supposed to do, help the people around you to
Mhm.
do good things. Get up, do good things.
Absolutely.
Support each other,
Yeah. That's great.
do the right thing.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Richard,
A lot of fun.
Has anybody called you the OG of San Antonio architecture? Has anybody ever called you that? The OG, the original gangster? That's kind of like, it's kind of a term people use today, the OG, but no.
You're thinking OG like the sighting.
Right.
Right.
GEE.
Curves.
Right.
My grandson the other day, called me a goat, and I,
The goat. Yes.
Yeah.
Greatest of all time. Yeah.
I said,
You're like, why am I a
"Dad,
goat?
What is goat? Dad, I mean, granddad. I was very happy with that.
Yes, that's a good one. Yes, absolutely. So again, thank you so much for,
Of course.
coming and talking
I
about
want to
this.
just quickly say,
Yes, please.
congratulations to Misa for all you're doing in this
Yeah.
community.
Thank you so much. Oh my
I
God.
think it's wonderful to continue the dialogue in art and architecture, design, and the place you have in San Antonio is so important. And I really, we support you monthly with a contribution.
Yes.
That more people, when those offerings come, find a way to support Misa as well.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. That's great.
Absolutely. Doing a great
Little
job.
tear. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I
appreciate
thank you, Richard, for the invitation. I wouldn't have even known. And I'm very
Yes.
excited.
That's
about what
wonderful.
you're doing.
Yes. We're so excited to have you as well. Such a great discussion. So yeah, thank you so much. And
Thank
please
you.
come back again. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
again.
Thank you.
Great.